As mentioned, this will be the first in a small series. I don't know how big the series is going to be, of Behind the Mask, speaking with people in the neurodivergent community and finding out about the person beyond the creator. So, Dave is episode one, and I'm thrilled to have you here, mate. So, yeah, thanks for agreeing to jump on. How are you feeling? I know this is. Am I right in thinking this is your first live?
First live, yeah. Up until a few weeks ago, I didn't really do TikTok. Even.
You've taken the platform by storm, mate.
Yeah,
How are you? Yes, so the way this,
so I'm a little bit nervous. Yeah.
and as mentioned earlier, this is, it can go at whatever pace, however you're comfortable with. And yeah, let's just treat it as having a chat.
Yeah, sure.
Initially, we'll stay away from the questions. So there might be some comments and questions and things like that. I've got some people in who are happily modding for us. So any trolls are in there, they will get rid.
Okay.
Um, and then
Had a
maybe in the
couple of
middle,
those.
we'll open up some questions, and at the end, open up some questions for maybe 10 minutes or so. So for me, it's one thing that made me really keen about doing this with you is I feel strongly about representation within the neurodivergent community. And I think with stereotypes of it being a naughty boys condition
Yeah.
and kind of this surge of people getting late diagnosed, myself included, and yourself, I think it's really good to get perspective from all angles. So again, thank you for agreeing to do this with me. So over to you then. So I know you as Dave, ADHD Journey 15, as
Yeah.
TikTok has it. So tell us about you then, Dave. Introduce yourself to the people that are
Ooh.
watching.
Right. I'm Dave. I was originally born in Bath, and I'm now live in Plymouth. Um, I didn't even know what ADHD was about until probably August, September last year. And to be honest, I was really ignorant and I thought it was something to do with naughty children, as you said earlier. And um, I think even from a really young age, I knew that I was different somehow. I thought I was just weird, to be honest. um, at school, certainly at junior school, I used to get up and wander around the classroom, um, and was always told off for being talking, not concentrating. All my school reports were like, David should try better, and the wandering around the classroom was literally beaten out of me, and that was in the good old days of school.
I mean, if there's anything I'm thankful for, it's the fact that I'm 30, 35 and not older, because I think that would have been exactly me in school as well. I think I would have
Yeah,
been that person getting the cane.
yeah. Um, Nearly every break time I was in doing lines for talking. Um, and I think, in the end, I sort of learnt to wander with my mind. I'd be looking out the window. If we were reading books, I'd either be doodling in thing, or I'd be 30 pages ahead.
Yeah, that mix between it. And how was school for you? How would you describe your experience at school? You mentioned how things were and behaviours and maybe what you looked
Yeah.
like in the classroom. Did you enjoy school?
Uh, I enjoyed certain subjects. Some subjects are like really bizarre that I enjoyed. I enjoyed art. I enjoyed woodwork. RE, surprisingly, I don't know why. It's a bit random thing. There were things that interested in, and I did really well in, and the other subjects. Um, I mean, I did okay. I mean, I got four A levels by the skin of my teeth. um, but no, I didn't. I didn't enjoy school. I didn't enjoy the social aspect of it. Um, I think being a little bit odd, I was. I think bullied a little bit, but I used humour to get my way through,
I think
and
that's common with a lot of people. You kind of create the funny to kind of almost
yeah,
distract. from that discomfort.
Yeah, and I, I don't even sort of make fun of myself to try and blend in, and so that sort of tactic sort of got me through. So I had a group of friends at school, but then when I went home, I didn't socialise. I didn't go out in the evening. I would, just stay in.
Keep yourself to yourself.
Mm,
Yeah, and I think like you mentioned kind of like about the times when you were at school and things like that. I think thankfully these days, um, kind of individuality and quirks
mm,
and things are kind of like encouraged.
mm,
But even back when I was at school and when you were at school, it was very conformist and it was kind of everybody had to behave the same, be the same, everybody was the same.
mm,
So I imagine that was really tough, you knowing that you kind of felt a bit kind of on a different lane to
mm.
people, but then you were forced because we all have to go through education. Was
Yeah,
that quite tough for you then, that experience in school?
it was. It was. I didn't particularly enjoy it. I I was lucky. I had one teacher who was a lovely, lovely man, and he sort of mentored me and sort of guided me. He was really nice. I think I think ADHD wasn't even. I don't think that was even on the radar in those days. But he. I think he just recognised. I don't know whether he's intuition, but he was a lovely guy, and I was really really lucky to have to. I mean, nowadays he'd probably be locked up, but for being too friendly with the pupils. But I mean, there was nothing sinister with him, but he was.
No, maybe for all we know, maybe he was neurodivergent and he just
Yeah,
recognised something in you as
yeah.
himself.
I mean,
And
to the point I went round to his house for tea, with his wife and his kids.
and
You
I
know,
think it was different times, wasn't it?
it
When
was different times.
my brother used to go to the football with his tutor, and like my mum and dad were aware, and it was just a good man taking my brother to Manchester because he loved football.
Yeah,
They both supported it, but yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? It's
mm,
different times, I think, very much.
yeah,
But with that, then, so we spoke earlier regarding kind of your experience and your journey to ADHD. Then, so
mm.
for people that are watching, then, so how old were you, and at what point was it when you had that aha moment when you thought, "Crike, this could be ADHD"?
It wasn't even me that realised it. Um, I had been going to some talking therapy, and I'd worked with a lady for probably 6 or 7 months. And then one week, it was probably about last August time, she just dropped in the word that, neurodivergent. And I thought, didn't even know what that was, I thought,
Yeah,
no, I'm straight.
yeah, I'm sure I know it.
So I sort of went home and sort of looked it up. I thought, oh, I don't know what she's talking about. And then she the following week, she said about ADHD. And that's when I thought, oh, naughty children, I don't know. And then I went home and she said, Google it, go home, Google it. And I went home and I went on the ADHD UK website
Great
and I
way.
just read it.
That's
And I just burst into tears because right there on the piece of paper was my personality, all my traits, all my things that I've been suffering, was struggling with. Uh, I just thought, oh my God, that's it. And then I totally went into denial.
When you mentioned this earlier, like it was quite funny to because I was the opposite. I went running at it, but you said
Mm,
earlier that you very much kind of shut off the idea for a good few months.
yeah, I did. I didn't. I I knew it was true. I mean, absolutely knew it was true. But I found it really hard to admit to that. Um, and
I, th-
I think it was a pride thing, to be honest.
I understand that totally, and I think sometimes as well, um, it can feel like, although you've had that relief, you then all of a sudden feel the social stigmas that we had ourselves
Mm,
about a condition,
mm.
about other people around you, and it can very much shut you up and silence you. Because I myself, like, I lent into it slightly, but it was via social media, not very much in my immediate circle, and it was almost that social media become that safe space to explore it.
Yeah,
And I know you mentioned that to me earlier in conversation, that TikTok was kind of a real starting point for you leaning into the idea and leaning into kind of your neurodivergence and learning more about yourself.
yeah,
Can you tell us about that a little bit?
yeah. I think I sort of I did a Google search, and I think a TikTok video. I was on YouTube, and I think the TikTok someone had posted a short across, and I thought, oh, TikTok, that's quite. And that, someone had sent me a joke on TikTok, so I'd had to sign up. You know, um, I'd had to sign up, and then I looked at. I think I found your. I think you were the first one that I saw, and I just went through your videos, and it was just like, oh, OMFG, So, and
Firstly, sorry you had to see my mug. If ever there's a way to introduce you to TikTok, it's a bearded, bald man with glasses. Yeah, there we go. Richard,
but
welcome.
no, I did find your content really really useful, and that's not me just sort of trying to big you up. I genuinely did, and I've seen a couple of names down here, and I'm in awe in the company that I'm in this evening, because there is such an amazing community on TikTok.
There really is, and I think I said earlier, like we had the conversation, and I'm glad that you took something from my content, and
Mm,
I think with a lot of creators, and similarly, I can see from the angle you're going with it. Kind of, it's almost like when you take something from TikTok and you benefit, you almost want to give back and pay
mm,
forward, and that was like me with some other creators, and you're very much doing that at the moment.
yeah.
Um, but going back to when you mentioned you went online and you kind of had that moment where you just resonated with ADHD. Were
Mm.
there any specific like main symptoms that kind of hit out to you and made you kind of think, "Oh wow, this is me"?
Uh, I, yeah, it's difficult to say really, because there's so many of them. The biggest issue that I've had over the that's caused me problems was the impulsive spending. If I'm honest, that really has been got me into so much trouble. Um, I I'd had a job down in Cornwall as a gardener, and I think because all my emotions were pent up, I wasn't sharing them, I wasn't acknowledging them. I developed fibromyalgia, and I was in a huge amount of pain, aches and pains, and the job I was doing involved lots of collecting firewood and what have you,
Really?
and I just couldn't physically do the job anymore. But that job gave me structure, and that job had structure. I'd turn up at work in the morning, and I was told what to do. I'd go and do it. It was very varied as well, so I never got bored. And so we moved back up to Plymouth, and I became a self-employed handyman. And then instantly, all my structure was gone. I had no, I had to organise my day. I had to organise my work. I had to get work, chase work, and
All sat on your doorstep to
it all
kind of
sat on my doorstep. And basically, my life unfolded. It really did unfold. It got to the point where I'd lost my self confidence, to the point where I couldn't even do jobs that I'd done dozens of times. I would sit outside the house and just go, I can't do it. I can't do it.
was
And
this like a brain fog situation, or
yeah,
you think maybe you'd burnt out, kind of the overwhelm of how big the task was of kind of setting up on your own?
yeah. I mean, initially it's wonderful. I had a website done within 2 days. I went on a tiling course to brush up my tiling skills. I, you know, I, and for the first, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, it was fantastic. but then the lack of structure and and it just unravelled. It really did unravel. I mean,
Yeah.
I posted some pictures of the back of my van, and it was just, I would go into a job to like put a curtain rail up, and I'd go back to my van about 5 times to get the screwdriver, the drill, and then I'd go back to get the drill bits, then I'd go back to go and get the raw plugs, and then I'd go back to get the screws. I mean, it was just like ridiculous.
And then that little time where you just start spinning on the spot and have to go, I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know why I'm here. I'm just going to spin a little bit.
Yeah.
But it is, you mentioned earlier, and in relation to impulsivity and spending and things like that,
Mm.
kind of with that, has there been anything in particular? Was it hobbies? Was it potential new career prospects? Because many people talk about like this endless roll of different hobbies that never
Mm.
kind of come to fruition. For myself, looking back, I had a habit every time the clocks changed, buying a new car or changing my car, like, and I didn't
Right.
realise it, but I'm now thinking, yeah, that was probably impulsive. But was
Yeah.
there anything in particular for you, or something that consistently came up?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been a fly fisherman, a metal detectorist. I've been a watercolor artist, oil painting artist, and an acrylic artist. I've started to do abstract paintings with ink and multimedia. So I've made 5 hobbies out of art.
And is all that kind of stuck in a drawer somewhere for
Yeah,
a
it's all up in the attic. I mean, I got to the point where I was selling some paintings. One of the galleries in Truro took my paintings, so I sold a few paintings. So I was quite pleased, but then I just lost interest.
I think that's the thing. I think we enter into so many things
Mm.
with the best intentions, and
Mm.
it's never ill intentions. Um, but it's that momentum, and I think that kind of, we mentioned earlier, like that kind of metal detecting thing that you were doing.
Yeah,
It's like that tenseness and on edge, and then the
yeah,
dopamine rush,
yeah. You get the beep, and it's like, oh yeah, 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 what it is.
and I
Oh,
think
wrinkle. Yeah.
without realizing it for years, we've constantly been kind of dopamining, and after that rush, and I think it sits within so many of us and the hobby. So I think a lot of people will resonate with your yeah, bottomless craft drawer by the sound of it. I mean,
Yeah.
fly fishing, that's a random one out there, but
Yeah.
it,
It was
it,
one of the, it's what I did with my first pay packet. I went and bought a load of fishing gear. Um,
have
you
you ever
know,
liked fishing before?
no, I'd never been fishing before. I literally got paid and went into town. And I mean, I laugh about it now, and I just look back and I think I really should be quite wealthy.
I think the idea of fishing sounds wonderful. Sitting round in your own company,
Mm,
calm, peaceful, waiting for a fish to come.
mm,
I can't sit still, so there's
mm.
problem 101 for me.
I think that's why I did fly fishing, because you're
Whipping it.
constantly doing it. You're constantly moving. Sorry, I'm sat on cushions on the floor, and
I don't ever apologise. It's fine.
I'm.
So
I mean, it's the same with my career. I started out in marketing. I was a marketing consultant, which was really good. We had lots of different clients. We'd start new projects each week, every couple of weeks. So everything was constantly new. And, that was really good. Did that for a few years. Then I got offered a job as corporate sales marketing manager in a software company. And again, everything was new. I managed to produce a marketing plan for them, which was initially quite successful. 3 months later, I was fired because I didn't do anything.
it's that we're not finishers, are we?
No.
Naturally, not. We're very much the idea, the creator, the starter. But to finish things, it kind of like
Mm,
the buzz is in the planning for
mm,
me. I always find, and actually the execution of it is a bit like, oh, it feels a bit too much like too much to kind of contend with.
yeah.
Innovator, a great word I've just seen in the chat there. So we spoke about your diagnosis earlier.
Yeah.
And you explained to me kind of, you've mentioned just how you kind of found out that ADHD was
Mm.
something. So the diagnosis process for you, how did that start? How did it go? And what did it look like for you to
Uh,
get to the point where you had your diagnosis?
I I think at Christmas I really hit crisis point in terms of I was really depressed, anxiety was through the roof, and I was really quite ill. And the GP gave me some antidepressants. I mean, I'd been prescribed antidepressants before because I was sort of diagnosed as having depression and anxiety, and ADHD was never considered.
Common, so common in the community.
Yeah, and they increased my dose at Christmas. Christmas, I was a total zombie, to be honest. They'd increased my dose. I felt really ill. I had a banging headache. And then I thought, no, I've got to address this. You know, I really, really have got to address this. And so I contacted my GP, who sent me the little, um, the 10 questions or however many questions it is, filled that out. And I scored, I think, 6 or 7. And so they said, oh, yeah, we'll consider you for ADHD diagnosis. The waiting list is about 3 years. And in
That
this
moment
area,
you go, ah,
I
thank
just,
you, crash.
and I thought, I can't wait that long. I haven't got that long. Um, so I found out about the right to choose through TikTok. um, Went back to my GP. The first GP that I spoke to was really, really good. The second GP, because you never get the same one at my surgery, she said, we don't do shared care. We won't accept a private diagnosis from any other company, or unless you go through the NHS. Um, and I know I can appeal that. I could have moved surgeries, but I thought, no, I haven't got time. I was at the point where I thought I am literally going to collapse. In a heap.
It's that snap point, isn't it? It's almost
Mm,
like that cord in your head is
mm,
just too as tight as it's going to be, and
mm.
you know if something doesn't change, it's just going to snap. And I resonate with that quite a bit. Um, and from that, you mentioned to me earlier that you decided that the private route was one that you kind of felt that your arm was up your back with, you had no choice, and
Yeah,
you had to kind of take that
yeah.
route.
And I know I shouldn't, but I feel incredibly guilty. I do feel incredibly guilty that I've done this because I see people on here, you know, crying out for a diagnosis, and I am a big fan of the NHS in terms of I think it's full of wonderful people, but the system is absolutely broken, totally and utterly broken, and it is failing people, not just ADHD people, but it's failing people across the board.
Yeah. And I think with that, I understand it's almost like private is a dirty word,
Mm,
and it feels privileged. But I think private for ADHD is not to be
mm,
to be mistaken with absolutely rolling in money and flush. I think at some, like for me, at the point I had to pay private, which I did initially, I I I couldn't see any other way in my head. And there was no way I could have sat in the headspace I was at that time for 3 years. There was no way whatsoever with it. So I understand, and I'm sure everybody will get and understand that going private, it wasn't a luxury for you. It was a necessity at that
it
time.
was. I ended up having to sell quite a bit of stuff. I went with ADHD 360 because their pricing was just a bit more transparent, I think. um, and so I just did what I had to. I think it would, I think it would have cost me more not doing it than it would have than actually doing it. And it's a bit of a crazy thing to say, but the
But I
cost of
get
not doing it would have probably been more.
And I think, like I mentioned to you earlier, I think in a lot of ways, age is only a number, but in the late diagnosed space, I know what 34 years was like.
Mm.
And then for yourself, like you were, was it 57 years at the point, or 58 years at the point when
Yeah,
you
yeah,
got diagnosed?
yeah.
So you go into diagnosis with ADHD 360. You mentioned to me earlier that there was the normal kind of conversation assessments, there was the visual eye, and kind of response test.
Yeah.
So not every provider does that. So do you want to let people know briefly what that was? I thought it was quite funny to me what you said earlier.
Well, it was I can't remember what it's called. It's actually on one of my earlier videos, and there's this sort of computer test, and you sort of sit down, and you have to get your head within this sort of circle. They show you this sort of circle, and you have to put your head in this circle, and then for 20 minutes, they flash up red circles, red and blue circles, red and blue squares. When you get two in a row of the same, you press the space bar, and it goes on for 20 minutes. So I'm sat there and I'm going, oh, I'm actually really good at this. I am really, really good at this. Ding, ding, ding. I was pressing it and I thought, oh, I missed one there. I realised I missed one there. And then I go along there, oh, I missed another one there. And then it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, I missed another one. But then I thought, no, I've done all right there. And I thought, I'm a bit worried.
Smashed it.
And then when I came to my assessment, he said, I'll show you your computer scores. And I said, yeah, I did really well on that, didn't I? And he said, well, it's on a scale of like 0 to 100, and anything above 80 something, we consider to be ADHD. And you were 96.
Take that as 96% and an achievement and win. That's
Yeah,
what I did.
exactly.
Nailed it, mate. So you went through that. So what was your final diagnosis then? So what was the outcome of your diagnosis?
They said it was combined ADHD. I mean, if you'd asked if you'd asked me, was I hyperactive, I would have said no, not at all. But then people that are like in my family, they say you're constantly moving, and like you're always fiddling with your ear, or I get an ingrown whisker and I sit there and and I'll just like until half my face is missing,
And
and
it
not
is,
realize I'm doing it.
I think a lot of confusion sits in with that hyperactive,
Mm.
because I went into my first assessment convinced I was just inattentive. And it was when they went, take away hyperactivity externally and how much of it's in your mind. I was like, okay. So I am a bit hyper. A lot of it in my mind, it was like a bit impulsive there instead of hyperactive. I was like, now it makes sense. So you got diagnosed combined, and then you had that initial elation. How did it feel? So you're sat there having spent years kind of masking, kind of carrying that weight and that kind of internal shame that a lot of us carry, and then someone sits in front of you and says, David, it's not all been you. At 58 you have combined ADHD. How did that feel?
It it was a real mixed emotion. The Initially it was like, thank God I'm not a weird, I'm not just a weirdo. I mean, it just gave me that validation that there was a reason that I did some of the things that I've done and made some of the decisions that I've made. And I thought, wow. And then it was just like, what if I'd been diagnosed even 10 years earlier? What if I'd been, or,
Yeah. And we spoke earlier about that kind of, it's that what if of like, oh, who could I have been, what could I achieve, what could I have done, and it is such a hard process
Mm.
after getting diagnosed. And I know in one of your videos, after not long after getting diagnosed, you spoke about like the post diagnosis blues, I think
Mm.
was a way in which you referred to something.
Mm.
So how was it then? You had that initial validation and that elation and stuff. Then you go away from the appointment. What did the days after or the weeks after look like for you?
Uh, it was a real roller coaster. What like I'd swing between, oh, fantastic, at last this is going to get sorted. Everything's going to be all right. To real low, real lows. Um, it's really taken. I don't think there's an area of my life it hasn't affected, and especially recently with my work and relationships, it has put so much strain on everything, every aspect of my life, and just to find the sort of common, the thing that sort of,
The rationale behind
yeah,
everything.
the rationale, yeah, it made me really sad actually. I think, yeah, I think I was just really sad, and I think I was angry with it. I think now I've much more come to terms with it and sort of actually embracing it, because I can actually see that I can, there are ways that I can use it, and it's not the enemy. You know,
And I think
it's just a different way of being.
yeah, and I think that's it. It's like you spend years not kind of voicing the weaknesses you feel inside because you
Mm.
don't want to be different, or you're trying to mirror somebody, or you're trying to mask and fit in. And
Mm.
then all of a sudden you just find out that there's reason for it. It's you get the elation,
Mm.
but it is, you mentioned the sadness and stuff, and it is, it's almost like a grief
Mm.
that you
Absolutely.
experience. And for anyone that thinks, oh, they've got the diagnosis,
Mm.
fantastic, it's all happy and rosy,
Mm.
it's positive, but it's not the end of the journey. It's almost like the start.
It is. I think it's the start of you almost like a start of a new life.
You've
Um,
got to rewrite that book. It's like you've
mm.
gone, oh shit, I've been reading the wrong book, I've got to start another one.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it feels like from scratch, doesn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you mentioned earlier, and this is totally down to whatever you're comfortable with. You mentioned about it putting a lot of strain on your life and relationships and things like that. Um, have you found that with the knowledge and understanding has helped kind of ease those tenses and that those kind of difficulties?
Yeah. It I think it has for me. I think some of the people around me, it is still very difficult for them, because I've got the diagnosis, I've got the understanding, but they've and because that's mine, it's easier for me to accept that, okay, that's why I did this, but they've still got to, you know they haven't got that, although they know my diagnosis, it's not the same for them, that
Mhm. And
because
it
they.
does. It can affect everybody around us, and
Mm.
I think that's important for anybody that kind of has neurodivergency and stuff. It's really important to kind of stay true to yourself and start to understand you,
Mm.
but it doesn't mean that you can excuse everything around as well. You have to kind of be aware that
Mm.
actually you may have done something unintentionally, but the impact on others is still
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I think the difference for me is I felt like I had the words to explain it after finding out,
Mm.
whereas before it just felt like a bit of an excuse, or like a taking it in a different direction.
Mm.
So we've spoke about some of the struggles and some of the funny sides of it, and well, not so funny on the bank,
Yeah.
but some of the hobbies and interests and stuff like that. Um, So, are there any elements of your ADHD that you really see as your strengths and actually as strong character traits that you have, and think things that you really enjoy about kind of the person you are, which encompasses having ADHD?
I think, yeah, there have been times where I've been like had to really step up when there's been a crisis, and I can just, I can just like
Mm.
just act, or know what to do, and just do it. Um, Ask me to load the dishwasher properly, and then I'll probably struggle. But like the house is on fire. What do we do? I've sorted it.
Right. And I think that prior to diagnosis, that's why it can be so difficult to understand, because we could crumble in what would be considered things that are kind of just normal day-to-day activities, but then some high stress and high kind of risky or kind of requiring things,
Mm,
we just turn our
mm,
hand to it straight away. And people have been mentioning the word hyperfocus, have seen it consistently coming up, the hyperfocus and things.
mm,
And it almost is like in that time of kind of danger or need, you can hyperfocus and you just cut out any of the risk factors and you just deal with the job in hand. Is there
mm.
anything in particular significantly that stands out for you that you think you've just handled like a boss?
There was many years ago. It's one of these bizarre things, and what my granddad was a head gardener on a estate down in Bath, and we were he was cut. They were cutting some trees down on the estate, and they cut down a tree. And as kids, we'd all go and help. We'd have a big fire with all the sticks and things. Anyway, he felled this tree, and there was a group of three trees, and we all just jumped up, ran across to go and get all the branches and stuff to gather them to put them on the fire. And this huge limb fell off the other tree, and my cousin was stood underneath it, and somehow I managed to see the limb of the tree is falling, get over to him. And I mean, in my mind, it was probably about 5 minutes. In reality, it was about 3 seconds. And I just picked him up because he was young. He was about, I don't know, 7 or 8 at the time. I just picked him up and moved him out of the way. And
It's
it really was. It
that,
was like a
that
matter of seconds.
sensitivity to things going on around you, like you saw it the split second it was happening, you were aware of it and you were able to
Mm,
react. It is. You also, you mentioned earlier on about hyper focus and also that attention, that split second attention in random places. You mentioned driving in the car, I think it was with your
oh,
wife, around the corner,
yeah,
and split in a literally one single frame. You saw that a calf was being born, and you'd
yeah,
clocked it a mile off, and then you'd seen a live birth in
yeah.
seconds.
I was driving in the car, and I find we like, I don't know whether everyone else does this, but you notice the most bizarre things. And I was driving along, and there was a car field, and it was actually a lamb, but the lamb was being born in the field, and I saw the lamb actually literally come out, and but I'm driving,
Yeah,
and
yeah, totally. It's like,
my
look
wife was like,
forward, you're right.
"What? Keep your eyes on the road." Yeah.
What a beautiful sight, though. A beautiful sight, and I'm here for it. And with that, then, so if we have a look at you got diagnosed, and then from that point forward, were there, in the short while it's been, has there been any things that you've managed to put kind of systems or strategies in to support your ADHD just because the knowledge is there for you?
I've realised that I need the systems, and that again, this is something that I picked up off TikTok. That I can't just rely on my notebook or remembering it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I've realised that I've got to put really robust systems in. Certainly things with my paperwork. I've um, just signed up for like a job management system that
We'll
can
support with
key
that.
in all the jobs, and it sends quotes for me, and then will generate an invoice from that quote. Um, so that's a real positive. Um,
And I think previously, like, and I've been in a similar situation with paperwork and stuff where you kind of assume that you should manage it, so you kind of just shut it away and you start drowning under it.
mm,
There's something freeing about being able to go, do you know what, actually, I'm now more comfortable saying I've got my strengths, this is a weakness, and actually I need something as a fail safe for me to make sure that I
mm,
don't drop the ball here, or if I do drop it, it's not so significant.
mm,
And I think there's a there's kind of a way in which that the shame is removed from admitting your
mm,
flaws. And I think, like, I'm not comfortable with the word disability being linked with me.
mm,
Like, it's there.
mm,
ADHD and neurodivergent can be debilitating, but I'm still making friends with that. But in reality, there's things there that make us less able, and actually having the ability to put things in place to just give us the opportunity to do
mm.
and be successful without those kind of issues. I think accepting that and putting things in place can really help.
Yeah,
So you moved forward then. So from the diagnosis, it's been quite a short space of time from your diagnosis
yeah,
until this week.
yeah,
And I think I think what I want to start by saying, which I've said to you directly, and I've said in other ways, thank you, firstly, because your video that you released, which we'll talk about in more depth now,
mm,
was one of the most raw, authentic, genuine, and touching videos that I have seen in a long time. Um,
thank you.
I could get emotional. It really, really, really touched me, and I know it did many as well. So the kind of the context of that video was from your diagnosis. You moved forward, and you discussed medication with the company.
Yeah.
So what happened in that process then? So was it immediately they said to you, we need to put you on medication? Was it a discussion? What did that process look like after your private diagnosis?
The guy was really, really helpful. He explained the different types of medication, the broad types, and he gave me the names of the ones, um, the dexamphetamine, this dexamphetamine, and the one that I can't pronounce, methylphenidate. Well, which, yeah, you know the one I mean. Anyway, basically, so he said, look, just have 2 weeks, process it, have a look at the meds, and see what you know see. Look at the pros and cons, decide whether you want to go for meds, and go from there. And
How did you feel about medication? So, like, there are, as with any medication, there are risks and there are
yeah,
things and side effects that it can cause and so forth.
yeah,
Like, how did you feel having been somebody that had been treated previously for, you mentioned anxiety, depression, and
yeah.
things like that, but having been treated for these conditions with medication previously and in some angles not had a positive experience, how did you feel then going on another angle with
I
medication? How was that for you?
I was very nervous. In the past I'd really suffered badly with anxiety. Um, After my marketing jobs, I had my own aquatics business selling tropical fish and koi carp, and that business failed,
Uh,
and I went bankrupt. I had to go personally bankrupt because I was stuck in a 6-year lease on the premises, and so I had to go personally bankrupt. and I lost my house, literally everything, going personally bankrupt. And obviously, after that, I was quite depressed, and they put me on citalopram. And 2 weeks after taking the citalopram, um, things felt very, very bad, and I felt that I didn't want to be around anymore, and I actioned that. Um, and theoretically, I shouldn't have had a. All I'm going to say, I won't be specific, but I shouldn't have had a headache for about the next 3 years. Um, and I ended up in hospital for just over a week, and I was basically then I was saw by the local psych team, and they basically said this was quite common with people being given antidepressants. It can give you an
It
enabling.
can bring on ideology and kind
Yeah.
of heightened senses of that kind of no longer wanting to be around and things like that. And um, when we spoke earlier, we discussed this, and you said you were more than happy to talk about it. So yeah, for anybody that is watching, that there is help out there if anyone is struggling with this, and if anyone doesn't want to kind of listen about kind of people being in places where they no longer want to be here, now
Mm.
might be the time for you to just drop down for 5 or a couple of minutes. But going back to that, how was it for you? Like I can totally, I don't want to use the term understand, but I can only imagine or empathize how that must have felt. You've kind of you've put everything into starting at this business,
Yeah.
and it's kind of it's just slipped from underneath you,
Yeah.
and everything's came crashing down. You've tried to take a step forward in medication, and the medication has just taken you in a wrong direction. And how did you bounce back from that? I'm so glad you did, because we're here having this conversation.
Yeah.
But
It. Do you know what? I don't know. I, I really don't know the answer to that. I think I was lucky with the people that I had around me at the time. Um, all I can say, if anyone ever gets to that stage, just don't act on it. Just don't. Even the worst situation, and anything, even a situation that seems totally impossible, is only transitory.
and
It really is, and please just speak to someone, anyone. It doesn't matter who it is. Just do it. Don't
and it's
don't act on it.
it's not using kind of a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And I think
No,
I, th-
no.
I, think-
Every,
I
every problem is transitory. I mean, losing your home, you know, is a mammoth thing,
absolutely.
and it is a mammoth thing, but it is transitory. There is still a life after that.
And as somebody that has been in a similar situation, so firstly, thank you for sharing that with us,
Mm.
because I think when we spoke earlier, something you said which just it really reaffirmed to me why what I'd kind of picked up from you as a person to be true to who you were. And it was if me sharing a story and kind of talking about something that was quite painful
Mm.
is beneficial to one person,
Mm.
then that's something I will continue to talk about. And I love that. I think it shows kind of credit to your strength, character, and you as a person there. So thank you
Mm.
very much for sharing that.
Thank you. It's like funny. I don't feel. I can't look at the comments at the same time because because I'm old, I can't actually read the comments properly. So,
I don't even know if it's an old thing. I think it's just because that our focus is shite on the same.
but I've noticed the odd comment, and I can sort of read the odd word. So I do apologise to anyone that if I'm not replying or acknowledging your comments, it's not that I'm ignoring them, is I can't read them.
We'll
But
go back in
I
a
think I can look back through.
we'll make sure we give people opportunity shortly. There's a couple more things to explore, and actually, where we were going with that was so you'd had such a negative experience in medication, you'd
Yeah,
then got diagnosed. The practitioner had given you a really good overview of what medications were available,
yeah,
and you agreed on the one you were going to take.
yeah. The one that seemed to make sense to me was the Avance. So this dexamphetamine, and it lasts sort of 8 to 12 hours, which basically would see me through the working day, which is what I really wanted to do. That was my initial reaction, and then he said that's what he was going to suggest for me anyway. So we were both in agreement.
And
I
what does that look like for somebody private then? So obviously, with private diagnosis, until the doctor agrees to, or if they do agree to take shared care, that is kind of a commitment and investment you're making
Yeah,
for yourself.
yeah.
What does that look like, kind of bracket wise? Not specifics. That could be
Yeah,
per.
no, I'm quite happy to. I think they prescribed me 2 weeks of the 30 milligrams, and then 2 weeks of the 40 milligrams. I've got a review after 2 weeks. Um, they have a pharmacy that has it in stock. This was my big concern. Um, so the 30 milligram, the 14 were about the 14 30 milligrams, I think, are £37, and I think the 40s was around about £45.
So around the
Yeah,
nine.
I think about 100 quid for the month.
Yeah, and it's
I
not
mean, it will
it's
go
not,
up as the dose increases. Yeah,
and it's kind of it is. I think that's the reality, and I absolutely understand why someone would pay. It makes absolute sense. But then we go forth then. So the medication's agreed.
yeah,
They drop on your doorstep, and that leads to the video, which has got over 500,000
yeah.
views.
I that is
Incredible
beyond
numbers.
my like. My
So
family
yeah,
are totally embarrassed.
I love it. Have you had people going, I've seen your video, you popped up on my TikTok. It's great. So that video that I mentioned earlier, like it was such an incredible video. And I think it will be it will hit home differently to a lot of people, but the message and positive and just the light and at the end of the tunnel that the video shows can be there.
Mm,
So day one, then you wake up, you make the decision that you're going to capture this moment.
mm.
I believe from a video earlier that I watched of yours, you're unsure whether you were going to capture that because you were a bit uncertain about
Yeah,
whether you wanted to.
yeah. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, and and then I thought, well, I didn't know what to expect, so maybe if I can show someone actually someone might get, um, someone might look, it might help someone just to see. And I wasn't expecting the reaction. I really wasn't expecting the reaction
The reaction from
from me.
people watching it, or your reaction to the medication.
My reaction to the medication.
And I think that right there is why it felt so authentic.
Mm,
So many people people commenting how it evoked emotion in them. So for anyone that hasn't seen the video, if you go over to Dave's page, you'll see it's there in all its glory, rightfully so. And on this video, you kind of when we got through the dog lapping up his water,
Oh, I
and
know. Someone
I
pointed it out to
hadn't
me, and
noticed
I
that,
just
and
like.
then as soon as you said it, I was like, I can't not hear the dog licking the bowl now.
I mean, I think the glass is just like this, and then you hear this.
Oh, it was brilliant, and you were there, and I don't like you took the medication. What was did you have any expectation going into taking them that tablet? Because it
No,
can differ for everybody. Not everybody is guaranteed the same experience.
no,
And
absolutely.
as you said in your videos, this was your experience, and that is it was what it said on the tin. It was how it was for you. Um,
I
what were
think
you
I've tried to keep
thinking?
saying that on my videos. All I can say
Mm,
is how it was for me. I mean, if you got a bag of peanuts with 100 peanuts in it and you hand it out, probably 80% of the people will say, "Oh, that's a delicious snack." 19% will probably say, "Oh, I hate peanuts," and 1% will die, you know,
yeah, that,
from an
you know,
allergic
yeah.
reaction. So,
And it is
um,
it differs. So you took the medication, and then initially, the first part of your video, let's call it the color and the clarity section. I know
mm,
you kind of you described in the video how your head was feeling a lot calmer. There was a bit of tinnitus in there at the
yeah,
time because it's something you have.
yeah.
And then you spoke about colors and the weather and stuff in it.
Mm.
What was that like then, that experience for you?
Yeah, the world just got brighter, but not in a wacky way. It was just like someone. If you turn the brightness up on your computer screen, just a little bit,
Uh,
uh,
like
and
when you take the plastic off the telly, when you
yeah,
forget you've had the plastic on your new telly or your monitor, then you peel
yeah,
it off and you think, oh God, that's good quality.
yeah, and just thought, wow, and I can hear the tinnitus, and I just thought, it's only a little. That's actually left over from my running with the medications, the previous medications.
The
um,
aftermath.
mm,
And then from that, it went forward and you were balled over with emotion
mm,
around the quietness and the calm
mm,
that you felt. And I think for anyone that isn't neurodivergent and doesn't have kind of ADHD, I think everybody can have noisy brains, and ruminating isn't something that's just for ADHDers and stuff. But I think one thing that I only realised when I spoke about it is the narrative and the monologue and the crossroad of conversation and the scattered brain,
mm.
which I just thought was normal, actually isn't. And it's very, very much a neurotypical thing. So mentioning that quiet, how was that for you?
Oh, I just, I can't actually watch the video at the moment. I watched it back once because I just cut a short clip out of it. I can't watch the whole thing at the moment. It's still, um, to
It's okay to jump over it if you don't
it's
feel.
no, it's the sudden realization of, I don't want to use the word what a normal brain is like.
What a typical brain.
Yeah, okay, yeah, typical brain. Um, and because my everything has been in such turmoil, um, just to get that level of calm was just like, wow, and that quiet. Although I know a couple of people commented on it and said, oh, they're worried about that piece of calm, but I'd describe it as a bit like if you come out of a dark room into a bright light, your eyes, there is this sort of
Period of adjustment.
and then you sort of adapt to it.
Great analogy there.
Mm.
And so from that, you have now been, is it 4 days, 5 days taking medication? Have you had any side effects or anything from the medication yourself?
Dry mouth, which I think everyone gets. Up until yesterday, I was getting a little bit of a woolly head about half an hour to an hour after taking it, which lasted about, I don't know, half an hour, something like that. The the first night, of course, I'd forgotten that I was drinking a huge amount of coffee. So the first night, I went to bed, went to sleep, slept like a log until 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I was absolutely wide awake. I went downstairs and sat down there till 6 o'clock. But then, I'd had 6 cups of coffee that day as well as my meds. So that was not a good.
With coffee, a lot of us self-medicate almost because
Mm,
like a typical person might say they get a rush or they can't sleep if they have too much coffee, and quite often with ADHDers, it actually takes us from -10 to 0 and almost makes us feel a little bit level or a little bit calm, and in some cases sleepy. I know people have a coffee before bed because it knocks them out.
mm.
Um,
I mean, I've another thing. I've got sleep apnea, so I have to sleep with a CPAP machine at night.
our
Um,
very own Bane on our hands here, with the mask on.
yeah, a literal mask.
Yeah. Yeah, take off the mask and then take off the mask. And what would you kind of say to anybody else then? So we've captured you're very early on in your medication journey, and you're going to be moving up the kind of dosage to find what best suits you. Um, and I think the significance for me is not only your story, not only the demographic I think you importantly appeal to, is to anybody out there who may be older, so 40s, 50s, who is just thinking, I'm too old, there's no point, there's no benefit to me exploring looking into ADHD. What would you say to those as somebody that's sat where you are now?
Definitely, 100% do it. Just it. I know my life is going to be different from now on. I just know. I think I was a little bit naive. I was thinking medication was the destination. Once I'd had meds, that would be it. I'd be cured, and it's not. They are just a part of the toolkit to handle this, to handle ADHD. They're one aspect that you may or may not use.
And I think that there are multiple avenues, and I think I've said before, like for anybody that believes they are or are diagnosed, there's so much individually you can do to learn, to understand, to forgive, to rid yourself of baggage, to understand. Aside from medication, I think it's almost, I don't know, like I'm not medicated yet. I hopefully will be towards the end of the year. I almost feel like medication will help me making sure going forward is a lot more steady, but I've got to put the work in of what's happened prior. Like medication's never going to stop the reality of what's been, and
Mm.
that's kind of where the work sits
Mm.
to understand. Would,
I
would
I think it's going to give me the headspace to be able to put the things in that I need to do. Um, at the moment, I've been talking about, what I think, what my experience. I would suggest that everyone gets talking therapy when they go on meds,
Mhm.
um, and with someone that understands ADHD. And I think that is critical, or at least be in communication with someone that really understands ADHD.
Yeah, and I think that's what I found from connecting with other neurodivergent
Mm.
people is it's not just sympathy and people going, oh, that must be like talking to somebody and you know that that person truly understands
Mm.
or has an understanding of. It's so cathartic and it's so rewarding to feel heard, but not just heard, understood as well. Perry's just talking therapy really helped me and Greg separately.
Mm.
So Greg and Perry um, both access therapy. They spoke about it before. I use my therapy that I have through work.
Mm.
Every year I get so many sessions free, and
Mm.
I use it in the same way I'd use my MOT and a service on a car.
Mm.
Even if I don't feel I've got anything particular to talk about, I will use it to make sure that I have a place for that kind
Mm.
of anything to sit there I need it to.
Mm.
So the final question from me, and then we'll put it to the people that are tuned in. We'll put some questions out and ask a few of those if you're okay with that.
Yeah. Sure.
But the final closing question from me is one that I've done a video on, and that question is: if you could send a message to your younger self,
Mm.
what would it be and why?
Uh, I find this is I actually did this in a video, and I found it really really hard because there was some things going on in my life when I was very young, um, which I don't really want to talk about, but um, and this those people that have been in therapy will know about like the inner child, and that little boy is still here.
Mhm.
Very big has been a very big part of my life, my whole life. And I would just say to him, "You are good enough." That's all I would need to say. But the thing that he really needed was just a cuddle, and that is, I would just give him a cuddle.
I love that.
Uh,
Um,
he's, the amount of opportunities that I've not taken because I didn't think I was good enough or I would be able to do, or um, yeah.
they're all saying here, they're all hugging you now, mate.
Oh, thank you.
And it is, and that is the end of the kind of questions we put out earlier. Thank you for being the first person to kind of come on these. We spoke earlier about procrastination. This was something I wanted to do last year, and
Mm.
I just let it slide and I let it go by. Um, and I think it's so important, and it's been an absolute privilege for you to be the first guest
Well, thank
on,
you. I've
on
really enjoyed it actually. It's I find it actually helpful actually sharing the story as well, because I think as you share it, you start to process it. Maybe subconsciously. I think you process things the more you share
it,
them.
it's quite cathartic as an experience sometimes. Speak
Okay.
just relaying it out. And I reiterate what you say. Just keep talking,
Mm.
and and even if it's something that you think silly in your head, it's not going to go away unless you actually put it out somewhere. Yeah,
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity,
I appreciate you, mate.
and what I do. I know I said it earlier, but your content helped me, and I know it's probably helped literally hundreds of other people. And just thank you, just really, really thank you.
That for me, you have me getting emotional here, mate. But yeah, for me, that means I've done exactly what I spoke on a podcast the other day about intent. I think my intent has always been to connect, support, and pay forward what people paid forward to me, and I really appreciate that very much. So, shall we take a couple of questions? See if anyone in the chat's got a question for Dave. Yeah, let's have a little rock. Let's throw some stims out.
Trying to get the optimal reading. Well, actually, granddad. I can't call myself a dad already.
You took that step up. So Emma G says she's found both of our pages today, and so grateful to both of us. Thanks, Emma. It's been great to connect. Mad about money official. Aren't we all? But we're bloody crap at saving it. They said that you're amazing.
Thank you.
If anyone has any questions, if you want to drop them in, anyone want anything you want to say to Dave, and I can relay that back to him. That's great. We'll give it a couple of minutes and then we'll close this down. No questions needed. You've answered everything so well. Saying to go, Emily saying impulse spends, lung attempt per minute going private. Yeah, I understand that. Watch you from day one, and you're doing great. Yeah, you are. So Perry has asked, what would you say to someone who isn't sure about getting diagnosed?
Someone, I'm nicking someone else's post and I don't know who it is, so I'm really sorry. But they posted this quote and it said, "It's better to know that you're a zebra than go through life thinking you're just a strange horse."
Yeah, I know.
And I can't remember who it was, so I'm really sorry. I don't like nicking other people's stuff without crediting them.
I think there's a lot on here that is recycled, and then what sits in between is the individual and their experience. So yeah, don't worry too much about that.
And yeah, and even if you choose not to go for meds, just understanding that you've got this condition. I mean, even if you just on the ADHD UK website, there is the screening form, and you can do it, and it gives you your instant score, and it tells you what level would be considered for referral.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you did that much, for me, it would give me the validation that I knew that I had that condition, that I had ADHD, and that then I could take the steps to, there are meds aren't the only solution.
There are like meds are said to be one of the main ones that can significantly help, but there are certain things you can ensure, like I don't want to say the food because of the Joe Wicks thing, but actually looking after yourself of what you put in your body can really help you. Exercise can help with the brain and lifting the mood. Having healthy hobbies and routines and structures can help. Drinking water, keeping hydrated can help. Trying to get as much sleep as possible and keeping a consistent, healthy sleep pattern where possible can help. So those are things that can help. I swear by meditation. Meditation for me isn't the quiet brain meditation is actually significant time for me to listen to my own thoughts. I find that very beneficial. Someone said, have you had any difficulties with obtaining medication? It's mentioned earlier, you've just started them, haven't you? So this has been
Yeah.
your first batch for
So
you.
no, not yet. I think
Um,
they implied to me that they felt that the supply would be stable. But don't quote me on that. I mean, I'm just going on one passing comment from someone. I think that is a quite a fear for me. Um, that
um, I think that looks like it's Mad About Money's just put in here. They did monthly talks alongside ADHD UK for anyone who is interested. That's a real positive one. Joe Wicks has done an apology video. That's what we want to hear.
yeah,
I think he should have known better. I'm not gonna bring him down for a mistake that he's made. I think apology, don't move forward. But yeah, should have known better. Perry is going to do the ADHD screener test now. So context with Perry. Her husband has ADHD. She strongly believes, and I think like me and Perry vibe, we're like twins. So it's highly likely that she does, but she's never lent into it to do the screener. And she's always felt that she didn't really need or want a diagnosis. So that's a massive step for Perry. So thank you. Yeah. So again, I'm gonna
for me, I just needed the validation as well. I mean, I was not in a good place, and once yeah, I think
yeah, validation's key, and I think we search for it everywhere, but actually, I think finding out what road you should be walking on really
yeah.
helps. Yeah, that's it. That's the first episode done of Behind the Mask. Thank you very much, mate.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Really enjoyed it actually.